You have big plans. You always have. There is a version of your life that plays in your head like a film. The business, the book, the body, the life. You can see it clearly. You want it badly. And yet somehow you are lying on the couch watching videos about people who built exactly what you imagined. Again, this is not laziness. Not exactly. And it is not a lack of ambition either, because the ambition is right there, burning, real, almost embarrassing in how large it is. So what is going on? Why does the gap between what you want and what you do feel so impossibly wide? Why do some people seem to move through life effortlessly building things while you feel stuck, spinning, somehow both desperate to start and completely unable to? The answer is not motivational. It is not about discipline or morning routines or cold showers. The answer is psychological, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Psychologists have a name for what you are experiencing. It is called high-need cognition paired with low behavioral activation. In plain language, your brain runs hot on ideas and almost cold on action. These two things can and do exist in the same person at the same time. You are not broken, you are not lazy. You are running on a specific kind of mental architecture that was never designed for the modern world. Here's where it starts to get strange. In the 1990s, a researcher named Neil Nystrom began studying what he called the ambition-execution gap, the measurable distance between a person's stated goals and their actual behavior. What he found was counterintuitive. The people with the largest goals showed the highest rates of behavioral paralysis, not the smallest, the largest. The more someone wanted, the harder it became to start. Think about what that means. The size of the dream is not the fuel. Sometimes it is the anchor. And there is a neurological reason for this. When you imagine achieving something, truly picture it in vivid detail, your brain releases a small dose of dopamine, the same dopamine it releases when you actually do the thing. Gabriele Oettingen at New York University spent 20 years studying this phenomenon, and what she found should make every ambitious dreamer a little uncomfortable. When you fantasize about success, your brain partially registers it as already real. Your arousal drops. Your motivation to act paradoxically decreases. Your imagination is so powerful it is tricking your nervous system into thinking the work is already done. This is not a character flaw. This is neuroscience, but it does explain why the people who dream the biggest often struggle the most to begin. The dream itself is giving them a hit. The dream is the drug. The actual work offers no such comfort. It offers friction, failure, the risk of finding out that maybe the dream was not achievable after all. And this is the second piece of the psychology. Laziness in ambitious people is almost never about energy. It is about fear dressed up as inertia. Psychologist Dweck, whose decades of research on mindset reshaped how we think about human potential, identified something she called performance avoidance, a pattern in which high-achieving, high-aspiring individuals avoid the activities that would prove or disprove their potential. Because as long as you have not really tried, you still have the dream intact. The moment you try and fail, the dream is threatened. And the dream is often the most valuable thing you have. So you protect it by not testing it. You clean the desk instead of opening the laptop. You research for the 6th time instead of starting the draft. You reorganize the plan instead of executing it. Every one of these behaviors feels productive. Some of them genuinely are. But underneath, they are all serving the same psychological function, keeping the dream alive by keeping it untested. There is a clinical term for the specific kind of person this describes. Psychologists sometimes call them maximizers with inhibited approach motivation. A maximizer is someone who cannot settle for good enough. They need to know they found the best option, the right time, the perfect starting point. Inhibited approach motivation means they are drawn toward goals, but something internal keeps slowing the approach. The combination creates a person who wants everything, plans obsessively, and starts almost nothing. Does that sound familiar? Now here's the part that most conversations about this topic get wrong. They say the solution is to lower your standards. To be okay with done over? Perfect. To just start. And while there is some practical truth there, it fundamentally misunderstands the psychology of this person. You cannot tell a maximizer to care less. It does not work. The ambition is not a setting you can turn down. It is closer to a trait. Research by Daniel Nettle at Newcastle University found that ambitious temperament, or a persistent desire for achievement and status beyond current level, has a measurable genetic and neurological basis. You did not choose to want what you want. You are not going to simply decide to want it less. So the question is not how to change what you are. The question is how to make what you are work with you instead of against you. Here's what the research actually points toward. The problem is not the ambition. The problem is the relationship between the ambition and the present moment. Ambitious people are almost always living in the future, in the version of their life that exists in possibility, not in practice. The present feels small. The present feels like an insult to the future, so they skip it. They wait for the conditions to be right, the time to be free, the feeling to arrive. But the feeling never arrives by waiting. It arrives by moving. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi spent his life studying the conditions under which human beings feel most alive. He called it flow, a state of complete absorption in a meaningful challenge where effort feels effortless and time disappears. What he found is that flow is not a reward for starting. Flow is what happens when you start anyway, before you feel ready, before the conditions are perfect, before the dream feels safe enough to test. Action is not what follows motivation in this kind of person. Action is what creates it. This sounds obvious, but it is the opposite of how lazy but ambitious people experience themselves. They are waiting to feel like doing it. They are waiting for the spark, and the spark only comes after the wood is already burning. There is one more piece to this, and it might be the most important. The people who appear to have solved this problem, the builders, the finishers, the people you watch from the couch, they did not stop being afraid. They did not stop wanting perfection. They did not cure themselves of the ambitious, maximizing, future-oriented mind. What they did, almost universally, is change what they were measuring. Instead of measuring the gap between where they were and where the dream was, they started measuring the gap between today and yesterday. Instead of asking, am I close to what I want? They started asking, did I move at all? A smaller question. A more answerable question. A question whose answer you can control. This shift is not motivational fluff. It is a structural change in how the brain processes progress. Research by Teresa Amabile at Harvard Business School found that the single biggest driver of engagement and intrinsic motivation is what she calls the progress principle, the experience of making meaningful forward movement on work that matters. Not the big win, not the arrival, the movement itself. When you start tracking movement instead of distance to destination, the psychology shifts. The brain stops registering inaction as safety. It starts registering inaction as loss. And ambitious people, above all others, cannot stand the feeling of losing. So here's where you are now. You are not lazy. You are ambitious in a way that scares you. Ambitious enough that trying and failing feels like losing the most important thing you have. You are a maximizer in a world that rewards iteration. You are a future dweller in a game that is only played in the present. And your brain has been giving you small doses of reward just for imagining, which has been quietly stealing your motivation to act. None of this is your fault. All of it is your responsibility. The dream is not the problem. The dream is not too big. The dream is just living in the wrong place, out in the future, enormous and safe and untouched. What it needs is to be brought closer. Small. Today. A version of it that can be touched right now with the hours you actually have, in the life you are actually living. Not because that is all you deserve, but because that is the only place the dream ever actually becomes real. You already know what the first move is. You have probably known for a while. The only question was whether you were going to let the dream stay perfect in your head, or let it become real and imperfect in the world. That question right now is still open. If something in this felt uncomfortably familiar, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to understand more about how your mind works against you and how to work with it instead, subscribe. That is exactly what this channel is here for.